Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure today to be talking to Ben Goldin, the founder and CEO of a really exciting customer engagement, customer experience platform. As you know, as we engage with our customers more and more, the differentiation is going to be in engagement, not necessarily just in product, but how do we engage? How do we embed? How do we become relevant in their lives? So Ben, our paths have kind of crossed indirectly and directly over the years, from Backbases to Mambus and whatever. And I think you're looking a lot better from your journey than I am from mine, but it's obviously a better, more cleaner life. So I think everyone would be really interested in hearing a little bit about your journey and how you ended up. Obviously, it was December, wasn't it, in 2022?
That's correct.
Embarking on the next phase of your journey. So over to you, Ben.
Sure, lovely. So thanks so much, Brian. First of all, thanks for having me. Excited to finally have a chat with you. So my journey, I started in technology when I was a teenager, right? So my journey goes back to when I was around 15 years old. And I was lucky enough to start straight in banking. Actually, my first project in banking was a self-service portal for banks to buy ATM machines, to assemble their ATM machines and order them from the factory. It was quite exciting. I was also a curious banking customer pretty much since then. And I got my first debit card when I was 15 years old. It was a local chip-based debit card. It was quite technologically advanced at that point. And I also got to use internet banking back in year 2000. This is how we used to call digital banking back then. It used to be just internet banking, and mobile banking didn't yet exist. And I must say, it wasn't quite a pleasant experience. And since then, I was always somewhat aspired to change the way people experience banking. And this is pretty much what I've been doing for the last 23 years. Before founding Plumery almost a year ago, I've spent 5 years at Mambu, where I was a first CTO and CPO, and Mambu is a leading cloud banking provider, essentially providing core banking infrastructure for modern and traditional financial institutions globally, serving around 400 financial institutions today, well, likely even more than that already. And prior to Mambu, I was at Backbase, where I was behind the original vision and version of their digital engagement platform. Well, as you probably know, both companies today are valued multiple $1 billion and leading their respectful spaces. So I'm basically very lucky that I was part of both journeys.
As you know, and for our viewers, I think I was one of the first to implement Backbase in the Middle East many years ago. I think I had more here and less here. That was in the days of National Bank of Abu Dhabi, and one of the first customers in Asia to launch a digital bank using Mambu. So that brings me to my question. Like you've worked from the back, okay, in the core, and you've worked up towards closer to customer. And that's an unusual mix, really. You're not you're getting closer to the customer all of the time. Tell me a little bit about Plumery. Why is it different? Why is it different to Backbase, for example, which is also
sure.
that space,
Absolutely. Let me maybe step just a little back and tell you why generally I decided to start Plumery, right? So there's one thing what I've seen for the last 23 years, but what is that is still not solved today? So as you know, and you've been part of that, the banking industry has been undergoing digital transformation for almost 2 decades right now. Yet, for one or the other reason, majority of people globally still do not have access to a modern, personalized digital experience at their banks. And of course, we know that banks are known to be a little bit slower and a little bit more risk averse. But on top of that, there's also a very limited choice of technology to support them in that particular part of the architecture. And we see so many banks are actually being forced to go down the path of building everything themselves in-house, or on the contrary, trying to buy everything out of the box, sacrificing on flexibility and trying to get one-size-fits-all user interfaces. Right, so that's fundamentally the challenge I've seen in the industry still existing today. With that, we wanted to provide a platform that would allow to build much faster at a reasonable cost and without actually sacrificing the control of UI or ability for banks to create new and differentiating features. So that's basically the problem itself. Now, to your question, answering your question, how we are unique, right? And what is different about us? So I like to tell our story starting with three fundamental principles that we follow. So principle number one, we believe that today a user interface or user-facing part of the digital banking architecture, which is actually mobile application or web application, is the part where banks should differentiate themselves the most today. And if I look 10 years ago, building mobile application was an expensive and complex task. Banks really struggled figuring out how to do that. But this is no longer the case today. Technology advanced a lot and it became much simpler to do so. But at the same time, building the underlying digital engagement functionality itself and integrating that functionality with core banking infrastructure and also doing it in a scalable, reliable way is still a very complex task that requires unique specific skills, understanding of how microservices architectures work, how all the underlying technical infrastructure should be provisioned and operated, and so on and so forth. And from what we see from our own experience, it typically takes around 80% of the entire cost and effort in building a digital bank. And you can actually correct me if I'm wrong, because you've done that yourself a few times. So with that in mind, Plumery is the first headless digital engagement platform for banking, which gives our customers, banks, a full flexibility where it matters most, according to our beliefs. So that's principle number one. Principle number two, we believe that when it comes to digital engagement platforms, or digital engagement space, better to say, banks shouldn't be forced to decide between buying or building. Our mantra is actually buy for parity and build for competitive edge. And our platform provides a comprehensive set of digital banking functionalities provided in the form of APIs that can be actually embedded into existing mobile apps, or banks can build new differentiating mobile apps on top. And that whole set of digital banking functionalities is integrated with core banking infrastructure. At the same time, it's also agnostic. It allows you to really create differentiating experiences on your legacy or modern core banking infrastructure. This enables banks to provide modern digital journeys, and also this is the place where flexibility meets speed and acceleration. So you can leverage out-of-the-box functionality for the things that are very much expected today by customers anywhere in the world, but at the same time have flexibility to build what's unique and differentiating specifically for your business. So that's principle number two. Stay with me for principle number three. One of the main competitive advantages of a tech-forward and digitally native company comparing to traditional organizations is the speed of innovation. The fundamental difference is that digitally native companies are releasing small incremental changes to their mobile and web applications multiple times a day. Some of them, like for instance Monzo, according to their own article, they release changes to their APIs 100 times a day. If I look at the most popular, let's say the most known digital companies like Amazon, Netflix, they do that thousands times a day. Amazon does 30,000 releases a day to their infrastructure. But the other thing is that they also establish a deep understanding of their customers, their behavior, their sentiments, and their needs. And they use that information to drive the roadmap, because they need to know what is it that they need to improve 30,000 times a day, right? And in order to move the needle, they have to make sure that they're solving the right problem for their particular customers. And looking at traditional banks today are still releasing changes once a quarter at best, but also deep customer understanding in most of the organizations is still in pretty nascent stages. So that's third principle. our operational backbone and data analytics capabilities that comes as part of our platform are designed to enable truly digital operations in a highly regulated environment. So how can we actually bring that way of working into highly regulated banking environment? That's our mission, that's our goal. So these two parts of the platform are actually designed to help banks to build new differentiating features using modern architecture principles, but without spending time figuring out all the nuances of that architecture, because it comes provided in a set of templates. But also establish deep customer understanding and release improvements multiple times a day if that's needed. Because I also appreciate many banks are not mentally ready for that kind of approach, and that's fine as long as foundation is there and they don't have to change the entire architecture the moment they're ready.
So what you're saying is, if you do a comparison, like if we look at Mambu and we look at Backpace in the past, I'm trying to, kind of piece your journey together. Like they fixed this particular part of that issue, like with Mambu, or if we look at, the other emergents like Cascada or Toom or Scalit, all of these new core banking. And what they've done is they've democratized core banking in reality. It's APIs. Okay, great.
Correct.
Then we looked at Backpace, and for me, it was very much accelerated my ability to deliver very UI UX type experiences very, very quickly. But you've gone a step further. You're actually saying, it's about how the customer interacts with you, the customer experience that counts.
Yeah. So a typical journey when you start digital transformation, well, actually depends, of course, where you start, right? But if we look at traditional bank, the journey starts by thinking, should we replace a core banking platform, right? Because this is where our brain lives. This is where most of the significant functionality. And pretty much every traditional bank I've spoken to, at the end of the day, they decide not to do that for one or the other ways. Unless, of course, they start doing it as a greenfield project and a speedboat on the side.
Exactly.
Right? So if we take that typical example of migration, they cannot afford replacing their 30 years old mainframe or anything like that. But at the same time, they face a challenge and the pressure from the market to provide a proper modern customer experience. And this is where we come in, right? We can come and sit on top of existing core banking infrastructure and enable banks to provide a proper scalable, from a technical perspective, which is also important, experience to their users without replacing the underlying core banking infrastructure. Some of our prospects and customers are asking, hey, so are you just an API layer on top, or you are a middle layer on top? No, there's a very good definition that was once introduced by one analyst, the split between system of record and system of engagement. Yep. Today, there are more categories there, but for the sake of simplicity, let's stick to these two. There are fundamental different challenges in your system of record versus your system of engagement, and the type of functionality these two systems needs to provide. Your system of record, like a core banking infrastructure, is really focusing on accounts, customers, products, and this should be done in a reliable and stable way. When we think about transactions in the core banking system, the most important part is to make sure we don't lose money, to make sure we can execute transactions fast, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to system of engagement, completely different concerns come into play. We need to think, okay, how our customers need to engage with that transaction. What about that transaction that is meaningful for the customer, for the end user? How they like to see that transaction, right? Is it just enough to show a cryptic couple of symbols that depict your merchant or your POS terminal, or you actually have to unfold that and show a proper name and the address and the potentially logo of the merchant? Can you just search transaction using name of the beneficiary, or you should actually provide a Google-like search to your transactions to help customers just enter some keywords and be able to find whatever is relevant according to these keywords. And a whole bunch of other things that are very relevant in the engagement space, but are absolutely, there's nothing in the core banking to support that, for good reasons. It doesn't have to be there.
Well, you remember the days that you were restricted to 6 months transactions because the core couldn't process more than 6 months those
Yes.
types of things. And this is something that we talk a lot about in New Era as well, is there are now two layers. Okay, there are two layers, and obviously the first layer, as you say, is that traditional banking balance transaction, and most banks just concentrate on that layer.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll throw in a bit of gamification or a little, but it seems strange, it's like a tack on. It's not emotional, it's not deep, it's not relevant. But now I think definitely, and this is where I got really excited when I saw that you started this venture, that above the share of wallet, in reality, where banks were always just to monetize, it's not going to work anymore, particularly in, with so many more options, and also the almost decomposing of banking we're seeing, and in lending and in payments and, deposits and whatever. But now this layer is actually your gold, and you're right, which is that share of attention, I call it, share of relevancy, which leads to loyalty, because at the end of the day, bank is just a commodity.
Yeah.
So you're that layer. And another thing, like when you put your product in, and this is why I get a little bit excited, probably because I'm a digi geek and I'm pretty proud of it. I think the modeling career is gone at this stage, but it goes like this. It engenders a culture then within those organizations, because we know, like, we're founders and we fall and we failed and whatever, but if you could give a bank a set of that engagement team the ability to be able to innovate without having to go and say, well, sorry, there's a dependency and that REST service won't be exposed to whatever, and by the way, we've got to run a pen test, and all you're hearing is, why do I bother?
Yeah.
And by that stage, the customer's forgotten. With that layer that sits above the bank, which is intelligent, okay? It's not an API, that's just the rails, yeah?
Exactly.
So an intelligent customer experience. So you're almost trying to create a digital twin, yeah? You're trying to digitally twin with that layer. I can see, it's going back to your past, and I love watching people's journeys, That seems like a logical play, because you went from doing it in the back to doing it on the UI UX, and now you figured it out. Well, I don't want to differentiate on UI UX. Okay, that's a given. Yeah. I want to engender loyalty, personalization, treat customers with respect, and at the same time engender a culture of innovation in banks that typically can't do it, because of course without your layer they're planting seed on the concrete, because it's got to be concrete, okay, because it runs the bank, of a banking layer. So you're kind of that. I really, and I'm, obviously we're partners and we similar views, but have you seen that kind of cultural change in these banks? Have you seen people starting to believe now that they can do stuff like this? I know you guys are young, but Ben, you don't do things slow. You could look at your past, from particularly Mambu. Have you seen a cultural change by giving people these tools?
Yeah, so I think it's yet to come, right? And that's exactly what excites me. To be honest, I've been at the front of this cultural change before twice. With Backbase, where we were the first ones to introduce something like that. We were the first ones to actually start talking microservices to banks, and different type of technologies that were unseen at that point. And we managed to move the needle, and we managed to convince top tiers of this world to go with us and do things different way. Then second time we did the same with Mambu, where we started to evangelize composable banking. And really just putting your core banking infrastructure in cloud and consume it as SaaS, right? Which is still quite at the edge for many financial institutions, right? But that's what excites me, and this is exactly what we are doing right now. And I don't want to introduce yet another alternative technology to the market. Really, I like to see how we can fundamentally move the needle for the industry, how we can fundamentally change the way banks operate, and as a result, people experience banking every day. So that's our mission. That's what we want to do. I hope we'll be successful with that, but that's what excites us.
I'm hearing embedded banking, of course, which I'm sure you guys are leading. Do you see embedded banking being the future? I suppose is a leading question.
I think it's not necessarily, to me, that's not necessarily binary, right? I think embedded banking will play a huge role, but it's not necessarily going to replace banking as such. I think it will definitely coexist with traditional ways we experience banking. There's huge amount of people who would still prefer to do banking in the way they used to do it before. It's very convenient to have banking embedded contextually into your other journeys, into other things you do. But as I said, I don't think it's going to be, it will completely replace other ways we experience banking today. We might see additional things coming up, right? Like, I think things like ChatGPT or language models will definitely introduce some additional ways how banking is experienced today. We've seen that before a little bit with conversational banking. It didn't quite pick up because the technology wasn't there, but now with the emergence of ChatGPT and similar tools, this might take a completely new renaissance. Let's see how this will look like, right? But generally, looking at trends, right? What are the trends? I have maybe a slightly unpopular perspective on this. At least this is how I see it. I believe our industry generally suffered a lot from creating hype around specific technological trends and advancements without really clearly understanding what problem we are solving for our customers. So I think the most fundamental trend and change we will see in the future is actually banks become much more customer obsessed, like a true digital companies. I think we'll both see that, but I also believe this is what needs to happen. What I mean by that is that, well, as I said, I think banks should start operating much more like a digital native company, establishing true and deep understanding of their customers and creating hyper-personalized experiences that address specific needs of their customer segment, shifting a little bit away from being universal and taking and catering for the needs of every possible customer segment, much more towards specific personalized experience for individual segments of their customers. I think this actually starts by defining that rock solid strategy. Who are the customers that we are going after? What are their sentiments? What are the decision-making process? What are the day-to-day challenges they have, right? Where we can be relevant for them and at which point in time. And only then we can think about what are the current technological advancements and general approaches like embedded banking can help, right? And can enable us to provide that unique and innovative proposition. Because it's always, especially for technologists, it's always very tempting to go straight into picking a nice shiny tool, you know? Oh, let's do Web 3.0, let's do blockchain, let's do generative AI, and you name it, right? But without clearly understanding what problems we are solving and for whom very specifically we are solving these problems, we are always at risk of spending time and money without really moving the needle, right? So that's my take on it.
I agree with you, and the particularly we had the blockchain hype, we had various hypes, we had the web, you know, the metaverse, etc. But it is about solving a particular need for a particular customer at the right time, be it embedded or direct. But I think it comes back to this: we'll start seeing those because of data. The true answers will come from data.
Correct.
Because I think we'll start seeing data-driven innovation, new patterns, whatever, new algorithms. And I know that, you know, some of the stuff that we're suggesting our customers look at, you know, on the edge, you know, is definitely about that. People want to feel special. People want to feel known. People want to be served well. And I think purpose-driven banking will be a huge part of that.
Exactly.
Rather than the gray, at times less than purpose-driven banking we're seeing perhaps in Europe with the interest rate things that are going on there, and banks not passing on interest rates but hiking the lending rates. So I think purpose-driven. It's been absolutely, I mean, Ben, I'm really excited about what we're actually. You're building a new layer. You know, you're leading that, and you know, I don't think you're capable of actually just doing a normal job. You know, not just coding. No, you want to change things, and it's people like you that that actually do move that needle. And what I like is, I didn't count how many times you said it, but it was a lot. It was customer, 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 customer. And all of these tools, are there to experience that, to make that customer experience, develop it, innovate it, personalize it, timely, quality, ethical, green, whatever. But all of these things that are becoming more and more important in our day-to-day lives.
Exactly.
It's been an absolute blast, mate. You know that I've been a fan of your companies and stuff you've been doing, and I have zero doubt that Plumery will go the same way Back Base and Mambu went. I suppose as well, and I think it's important, how can people get in contact with you, Ben? What's the best way? Through LinkedIn or
yeah, I'm happy to get connected over LinkedIn. Please feel free to send an invite. Otherwise, please just drop an email at hello@plumery.com, and we'll answer right away. So I guess that's the most simple way. Please also visit our website to read in a little bit different way. Same things I mentioned today. It's obviously plumery.com. Yeah, would be happy to engage. And thanks so much, Bryan. It was such a pleasure.
You know what? I'm really looking forward to our next conversation, because I know special things are going to happen. And as they say, to all our clients out there, when you see someone speaking with passion, pay attention, as they say. Ben,
Thanks.
It's been an absolute blast, mate. I thank you so much, and looking forward to catching, hopefully, in the same continent at some stage, but definitely face to face in the near future, I hope.
Absolutely, would love to. Thanks so much, Bryan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.